What's up, people of YouTube? My name is General Prime and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification icon for more videos. There is a popular saying that may have somewhat made sense as far back as in 1995, but not as much today, and that's that ignorance is bliss, mainly because, like I've said several times, we have access to quite literally a myriad of information at our fingertips today. There used to be a time when knowledge about our world and ultimately ourselves that we don't give much thought to today, mainly because of how trivial or simple they have become, used to seem so far-fetched and unknowable. People were mostly and rightfully ignorant and mainly superstitious because of their ignorance. Also, because of our innate and biological need for self-preservation, we came to interpret what usually would assume to be some predator lurking in the bush as unseen forces of nature. And so, as time went on, those unseen forces of nature were anthropomorphized, were given faces, special attributes, laws, and then eventually worshipped. And that, in its most basic explanation, is how man created gods, religion, and the concept of spirituality. But then time went on and science was discovered, and we adopted it as a tool for the better understanding of our world and ourselves. So gradually, our worldviews expanded, and tropes we previously used to attribute to those forces of nature we made gods gradually shrank. For example, phenomena like thunderstorms, earthquakes, and diseases, which we previously thought were punishment from the entities we believed in as a result of our disloyalty or lack of recognition to them, came to be understood as changes in weather patterns, movement of tectonic plates, and viruses or bacteria. We no longer gave credits to gods for bountiful harvests or beg for their mercies at times of famine. With the agricultural experiences we gained through 1,000 trials and errors, we came to realize that different crops flourished or failed under different circumstances, and there were a lot of factors like soil type, weather conditions, and geographical locations that determined if there was going to be a lot of harvest in a given season. With time, the entities or gods we gave so much belief and attention to were relegated to myths and fiction, and some were eventually forgotten. Some. The ones that remained were either politicized and used as tools for colonization, and the others, even though there were a lot of people who still believed in them, were demoted to at best demigods and at worst seen as demons or enemies of the religion and worshippers of the more popular gods. I would like to point out that in my opinion, no matter how advanced, sophisticated and informed we get as a species, there will always be some of us who are somewhat superstitious, the same way there will always be people with phobias, and I think that they both go hand in hand. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's the brain's way of keeping one safe, so I don't see any problem with a bit of harmless superstition. But where there begins to be a problem is when superstitions are taken as literal and objective truth, and that's where we Africans tend to falter. Now, it isn't news that Africans are a lot more religious and spiritual than any other race in the world, and we take our core traditions, beliefs and cultures very seriously, regardless of the influence of colonization. And for the most part, our cultures and traditions, which we pride ourselves in as our heritage, has worked quite well for us in the sense that we tend to be more connected to our roots, we're a lot more conservative, influential, and so on. But the same cannot be said about the beliefs tied to those cultures and traditions. Before colonization, we Africans, and I'll be focusing on Nigeria in this video, didn't have a centralized or monotheistic religion. We had different deities we worshipped and gave different adorations or penance to. And so worship to those deities came with certain beliefs, do's and don'ts, and rituals which quite frankly don't hold much water when looked at from the viewpoint of today's standard of morality. One example that comes to mind was the killing of twins in the southeastern part of Nigeria because they were seen as evil spirits that brought bad luck. Most Africans, especially Nigerians, believe so much in voodoo, juju, or what the West calls dark magic, a form of spirituality with the premise that the spiritual realm or world controls what happens in the physical, and so that belief influences their perception of reality and ultimately their way of life. So my question is, why do Africans, especially Nigerians, believe so much in the supernatural, and why have we allowed it to influence us so much, even though there doesn't seem to be any truth or evidence of it being real? There are at least 3 factors I think has played a huge role in our influenced acceptance of this belief system. The first one being the Nigerian media, specifically the Nigerian movie industry, or Nollywood as it's called. In the late 80s and early 90s, there was a boom in the horror movie genre, and this might just be my opinion based on cultural relativism, but nobody does horror movies like Nollywood. Not even Hollywood can try when we have classics like Willy Willy, Oracle, Igodo, and so on. These were movies that scared and scarred us as kids. Their depictions of the supernatural and diabolical seeped into our subconscious and had us believing in a lot of things like ghosts, demons, charms, and the grotesque practice of human rituals. There are no known polls or statistics, but I can assure you that about 90% of Nigerians believe that human rituals or sacrifice is real. The practice of using the vital organs of murdered victims as a form of offering to demoniac entities in exchange for wealth and power. This belief, amplified by Nollywood, caused a lot of killings and got a lot of people in trouble. One very memorable example was the 1996 Otokoto ritual scandal that shocked the entire nation. I'll be leaving a link in the description if you want to read about it. But one point I want to make from that story is that the blood money those ritualists made didn't come from any spiritual entities they sacrificed those bodies to. Instead, the vital organs they harvested were sold on the black market. But they had Nigerians believing that organs from kids and young adults were the ideal requirements by the gods in exchange for a lot of wealth, when in reality, the vital organs of kids and young healthy adults sold well in the black markets. And that brings me to the second factor, misinformation. Because of our basic belief in the supernatural, we tend to display a lot of confirmation bias in our reasoning, regardless of how illogical or obvious they may seem. Just as how a lot of Nigerians believe in ritual killings, we also believe in charms with purposes ranging from love potions to the protection from danger and even the ability to be clairvoyant. Though there is no evidence that these charms work, a lot of Nigerians embrace it, even public figures like politicians and, believe it or not, preachers and famous pastors. So why do 90% of Nigerians swear it does? Well, that's simply because of misinformation and the belief in the diabolical ingrained in their minds since childhood. So adding that to confirmation bias and a bit of ignorance concerning the given situation equals the unfettered belief in charms that shapes our reality. And this video is a perfect example of confirmation bias and misinformation at play.
That's one.
Satanan, Galil,
One nigga.
Galil,
Right there.
Little.
Every single person I asked to explain this video to me said the soldier used charms to protect himself from getting hurt. But a closer look at the video and a bit of information as to how guns work, and one would realize that those are not real bullets but blanks. First of all, as anyone who has shot a real gun in a confined space will tell you, if those were live rounds, I think everyone in that room would go deaf for at least a week because of how loud guns are and because the room isn't large enough for the sound to be dispersed properly. Secondly, to quote Newton's third law of motion, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. This means that if a live round is fired, the pressure from the bullet will create a backblast or recoil, and so shooters are usually required to protect their ears and hold their guns firmly in order for it not to fly off their grip. But it isn't the same with shooting blanks because the pellets released from the barrel carry little to no energy. Blanks are made to simulate realism, and that's why they are used mostly for training and also in Hollywood movies. The third factor is religion, obviously. There's a saying that the best way to control a population is through fear, and no organization does it better than religious organizations through their carrot and stick approach. And in Nigeria, they do it exceptionally well. Churches in Nigeria have perfected their art of keeping Nigerians in perpetual fear of the diabolical and supernatural. They, with the help of the media and our superstitious tendencies, have made us believe that they are the only ones that can protect us from these unseen forces. There are countless stories of churches taking advantage of the less informed, feeding into their fears and insecurities, and most of the time convincing them to submit all they have in exchange for special prayers that supposedly keep the demons at bay. Millions of Nigerians have fallen victim to these tricks time and time again by these mega churches they put their trust in, and yet it seems like Nigerians still can't take a hint. Our fear of the unknown constantly trumps our ability to reason and our capacity to be logical, and so it makes it effortlessly easy for the church to maintain control by making people believe in the insanely ridiculous. This next video is a very good example of that happening.
You are free.
Virtually everyone in that clip would have sworn that the priest sprayed out a dead lizard from the body of a sick old man. And that's the exact tactic churches use to keep Nigerians believing in things that are easily debunkable. There's never a direct eyewitness of supposed diabolical events. They are mostly just hearsay without a way of fact-checking the claims, and whenever there seems to be eyewitness accounts like the clip shown earlier, they are easily explained as either tricks, or in the case of most miracles that happen in churches, horrible acting by paid actors. There's a saying that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and for this case of the belief in the supernatural, I don't think it's true because, first of all, there hasn't been any compelling evidence that shows that it does. Secondly, most of the stories or claims are usually cynical and evil. There are never instances where the supernatural is used for good. Most claims and stories bear ulterior motives and the victim subjected to fear and control. And lastly, if truly we Africans had access to the dark arts, and we have always had people who are able to use them at will, why were we unable to use them to fight against slavery and ward off the colonizers? It would have been pretty useful at the time if you ask me, but nothing of the sort happened. Anyway, those are some of the reasons we Africans believe so much in the supernatural, and I don't think we would be giving up our spiritual beliefs anytime soon. I wish we would though. I wish we let go of such obscure mode of thinking and embrace reality, because there's literally nothing good that it's brought us, only ignorance, backwardness and puzzling observations from the rest of the world. So let me know what you all think, leave your likes and comments below, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers.